Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today for this very important presentation on vacancies and referrals. My name is Laura Michoud. I'm the Executive Director at the Supportive Housing Network of New York. Great to see so many of you with us. I would like to really thank our government partners for devising ways to make the referral process more clear and accessible. But I want to take a moment to level set. We are at the beginning stages of this effort, and there are unprecedented levels of vacancies to fill. This is a combination of COVID-related vacancies, staffing shortages, followed by new ESHI and 1515 units opening up post-COVID, post our COVID construction pause, and the previous administration's staffing freezes. This all created the perfect storm. Please know that the network, along with our city and state partners, are working to address this need and welcome the continuation of this conversation with all of you. The network will continue to advocate for our government partners to get the resources they need to get the job done. We will continue to advocate for ways to streamline the process. Everyone on this call today wants to see the process continually improved and resourced. We all want people to move from homelessness to housing as soon as possible with the fewest barriers. We have the opportunity to really dive into the referral process and invest in systemic changes to address this issue. This is very high on the network's agenda and on HRAs and OMHs. So to bring us to our agenda today and what this hour and a half is about, first and foremost, this is a presentation about re-rentals. Your initial rent-up may be very different from how you fill ongoing vacancies. To start us off, Rebecca will present a chart on New York City housing provider referrals and who you go to actually request that referral. Tricia will go through the request a referral form, which will be accessed through CUCS. Craig and Jennifer will present frequent questions about CAPS and referral processes at the Office of Supportive Affordable Housing and Services. During the presentation, please feel free to put questions in the Q&A box. They will be answered in real time, but many might be held to the very end, when we will be joined by OMH, HASA, OASAS, ACS, CUCS, and HRA to answer those questions. Please keep your questions to general process questions. It's not going to be the time to ask about a specific client or specific building that's having issues. And we really greatly appreciate you all being here. This is going to be recorded, and all documents will be made available after the presentation. So with that, thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day so far. I'm just gonna wait for my colleague to share the screen so that I can walk through this new resource that we created for you. Really excited about this resource. It is a re-rental referral guide, as Laura mentioned, and we created it with our city and state government partners. And the idea of it is you're a supportive housing provider, you have a building and you have a vacant unit. This is going to be your cheat sheet for, you can print it out, you can put it on your bulletin board, you can, bookmark it. It's going to be on our website, so you can bookmark it on your web browser. And you're going to go to that cheat sheet and say, okay, what's the population of this unit? And then how do I request a referral for this unit? So as soon as we get that screen, there we go. So this is our beautiful re-rental referral guide. And if there are any updates to it, we'll update it and we'll keep it posted on our website. And we will, of course, email this out to you all afterwards. One thing to note before I jump into this is if you have a congregate supportive housing residence, You also have a regulatory agreement for all your capital financing, and you may have additional rental assistance agreements in place for the whole project or for specific units. And so it's really important that you also check those documents and understand if there are additional requirements for re-rental practices or eligibility criteria. So please refer to those sources in addition to the table below. This table here for the guide is really looking at the social service contract and the population. So I'm going to walk through it, and we will again do a Q&A at the end, but feel free as we're going through it to put your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat. So starting with our older programs, the New York 1 and 2, you may have a contract with either OMH or DOHMH. And here's your re-rental referral contact. So there's a few different scenarios. The first is you might have an HRA or a DHS SRO contract. And in that case, you need to contact the SRO vacancy control specialist. And you'll know who that person is. It is connected to your SRO support services contract. Some of those New York 1 and 2 units do not have an SRO contract layered on top. And if that's the case, if it's just a New York 1 and 2, then your contact to fill your vacancy is CUCS, and we have an email and phone numbers on this sheet. So the next population I'm going to talk about is New York 3, Pop A, which is single homeless adults with serious mental illness. Again, it might be an OMH or a DOHMH contracted unit. Same thing here. So if you have an SRO support services contract on top of that, then you need to contact your SRO vacancy control specialist. If you do not, then you can source your referrals through the request a referral form, which is a new form that you can download in CAPS and submit it to the HRA Office of Supportive and Affordable Housing and Services at this new email address. So this is the form that Tricia Dawson is going to go over right after this portion of the presentation. New York 3, Pop B, those are adults with serious mental illness leaving state psych centers. Those are OMH contracts, and your contact to fill your referral is CUCS. For New York 3, Pop C, young adults with serious mental illness, same thing. CUCS is the agency that's responsible for sending you referrals, and you can contact them there. Pop D, SMI families, which would be a DOHMH contract. You can actually source referrals for this population in any manner consistent with what your contract says. But if you can't get referrals and you need assistance, you can use the new request a referral form in CAPS and submit it to HRA OSAS. That's the same process for New York 3, Pop E, Pop F, and Pop G. So for all of those populations, D, E, F, and G, you can source referrals in any manner that's consistent with your contract requirements. But if you do need assistance, then you use the request a referral form, which you can download in CAPS. New York 3, Pop H, which is the HIV/AIDS population. The referral agency is HASA, and you can contact Tommy Shee or Ala Zarankina. New York 3, Pop I, which is youth aging out of foster care with contracts with DOHMH. The referral agency is actually ACS, Paul Williams. Any other HASA supportive housing, you go right to HASA with the same contact folks there and their information. If you have a general POP unit contracted with HRA or DHS, then this one is simple. You go right to your HRA SRO vacancy control unit, and that is the person would be identified to you through your services contract. Okay, thank you. We're on the last section here. So some folks might have a contract called high service needs with DOHMH. Some of those units also are layered with an HRA or DHS SRO contract. So again, you're going to go to your SRO vacancy control specialist. If you do not have one, however, you can source your referrals however the contract specifies. And if you still do need assistance after that, you can use the request a referral form. NYC 1515, we're now on to the newer programs. Your contract is with DOHMH. For this population, you're actually going to be required to use a request a referral form in CAPS and submit it to HRA OSAS. That is the required manner that you're going to request your referrals for all your 1515 units, regardless of the population. For ESHI units that are specifically SMI, serious mental illness, if you're contracted with OMH, CUCS is going to be the referral agency there. For any ESHI units that are SUD, substance use disorder, contracted with OASAS, there is OASAS's contact information to request a referral for those units. ESHI stands for, thank you so much, the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative. That's the state's current supportive housing program. Okay, and let's just scroll to the last couple. Thank you so much. There are a number of other ESHI populations. And so there's a number of different state contracting agencies that are going to be connected to each of those individual populations. So you're going to need to contact your contracting agency to understand their referral process if it's anything other than SMI or SUD that we just went over. Any other OMH initiatives that weren't identified above, there's a plethora of them. OMH supported housing has been around for a long time. So for any of those not captured elsewhere, just go to CUCS, contact information right here, same as above, and they will assist you with your referral. Just a quick note, some of these OMH initiatives and some of the high service need units in CAPS, if you're looking in CAPS, they are described as SMI, but we wanted to list them here on this resource guide by what the kind of contracted population would be. COC units might be a HUD contract or an HPD contract. Most of your COC units are going to have an overlay of one of the above programs, so just follow those guidelines for referral. And if it doesn't have an overlay of one of those programs, then you can source your own referrals consistent with your COC contract requirements. Community units, last but not least, community units. Please check your building regulatory agreements and check any rent subsidy agreements for any requirements for renting community units. All of the processes above with our government partners, HRA, all of the others, they are not responsible for filling community units. Your regulatory agreement may outline that you have to manage a waiting list in a certain way. And so that's going to be the process that you need to go by to fill your vacant community units. So I know I went through a lot. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box and we're going to address them at the end of the presentation. This was just really the high level overview. And I'm going to pass it off to Trisha Dawson, who is the Assistant Deputy Commissioner for OSAS, the Office for Supportive Affordable Housing and Services at HRA. And she's going to go through the request a referral form, which is that new, very exciting form I referred to a number of times.
Great. Thanks so much, Rebecca. And thank you for Tishini and the network for putting together this presentation, and for all of you for getting on this morning. We really appreciate it. So again, my name is Trisha Dawson. I'm the Assistant Deputy Commissioner in the Office of Supportive Affordable Housing and Services. And I'm going to walk us through the request a referral form so that you can see what it looks like and how we will be moving through it. So share screen here for you. Okay. So I want to first show you the overall screen. This is a one-page, and you'll see at the top we have some directions. It's broken into sections where there's the site and unit information. There's contract and regulatory agreement information, building unit setup, and then interview contact information on the bottom. So let me zoom in a little bit so you can see more clearly what we're working with here. So again, to repeat what both Laura and Rebecca have said. This form is to be used for re-rentals and it's to be used for each individual unit in need of a referral. Before you start filling this out, it's really important that you go into CUCS and make sure that your social service and rent subsidy information for each specific unit is fully clear, because you need that information to fill out the form. And again, the form will be in CUCS, and when Jennifer and Craig go through their presentation, they'll show you where in CUCS you can find this. Once you complete the form, you'll save it, and then you can email it to this to the email right here, the referral request at hra.nyc.gov, and then there'll be a team on the receiving end who will go through this and then get back to you for setting up interviews. So first, you see in this top section, we have the nonprofit provider agency, and this is a fill-in, your site address, and unit number, or the name of the unit. So again, real simple, this is a fill-in. So this is the provider. Oops, I could spell check here. You have your site, address, and apartment number. Well, this next section has drop-down sections. So the first question, really straightforward, is a congregate or scattered site? And you'll see, and you have choices, congregate or scattered site. I'm going to land on congregate to get us started. And the next question is if this is an HRA contracted SRO. If it is, check yes. You'll notice that there's a little flag that pops up here. This is a reminder to you to contact your SRO vacancy specialist. If it's not a DHS HRA SRO, you check off no, and you'll see the instructions disappear and you just keep moving forward. The next question goes really to the great presentation, the great paperwork, the grid that Rebecca put together and shared with you is, what is the supportive housing eligibility? Critical that you know this. All of the different eligibility requirements are part of the drop-down. These are units that OSAS, the Office of Supportive Affordable Housing and Services, may be able to make referral to. But we do have some reminders in here for you. So for example, you can check on any one of these. Here's a New York 3 Pop A. But if you were looking for a New York 3 Pop B, you'll notice that there's instructions that guide you back to OHMH CUCS for referral. And again, the table that Rebecca just walked you through gives you all of the contact information. These flags will also pop up for populations such as a Pop H, which reminds you to go to HASA, or for Pop I, which remind you to go to ACS for referral. Okay. For this activity, we're going to land on a New York 3 Pop A. Then the next question is the source of rental subsidy for the unit. Again, lots of options here. There could be, if it's a scattered site, you'll be able to check that off. And want to just point out that if you click on any of the units that have a HUD COC, there will be a flag that pops up. This is to remind both you as the provider and the team who is going to be sending the referral that we need someone who is HUD has HUD chronicity. For this, we will go with the section HPD Section 8. The next piece is if the social service contract or rent subsidy requires the client to be HUD chronically homeless. This speaks to Rebecca's comment of you really need to make sure you understand your regulatory agreement. And for all staff on here, please make sure you're training all new staff who come on board of what might be underlying on regulatory agreements. Whether it's a service contract, a rent subsidy, or both, there will be a flag that pops up again so that we make sure that a referral is sent to you who's HUD chronic. For this, we'll go with the no. And then are there other population-specific service contract requirements to the referral? Some providers do have built into the contract or to the regulatory agreement a requirement. If that is the case, you can check yes, and there'll be a flag where you can enter in the requirement down below in this comment section. Again, this is not a preference, but this is if it's a contract requirement for the referral. We're going to check off no. Then we slide down to the next section regarding the building and the unit. So is there an elevator? Let's say yes. Is the unit ADA accessible? Also a yes. And then what apartment size is the unit? And here we have some options. If this is any type of shared unit, whether it's SRO with shared bathroom or shared kitchen, you're going to be checking off unit has a shared bathroom and or kitchen. Otherwise, you have the 1 bedroom, 2, 3, or studio. So for this, we'll check off shared bathroom and or kitchen. The very bottom, really important section for us to have, you really want to fill in who is going to be the person that the referral team will be reaching out to set up the interviews. So name of the contact for the interview. So we'll set up Rebecca. Okay, and her email. This is all fill in, and then her phone number. Okay. Please make sure that the person who is going to be receiving, who's going to be in communication, be setting this all up, that this information is in here so that we can be in touch with you. And again, once this is done, you'll save the form, you'll email it to referral request at hra.nyc.gov, and there'll be a team who gets back to you right after we receive it. And again, so this is the form. Jennifer and Craig are going to now walk you through what is in CAPS, and then at the end of that, they'll be able to show you where in CAPS you can find the form. So we turn this over now to Jennifer and to Craig.
Great, thank you, Trisha. And so it's going to be the Jennifer and Craig show for a little bit here. So I hope everyone is doing well this morning. And I wanted to thank the network on providing this forum for us to describe the CAPS system and the referral placement process. So and just waiting for someone to bring up the presentation.
And likewise, oh, sorry, Craig.
Yeah, there we go.
I just want to say, and likewise, yes, thank you all for being here this morning. We recognize that, you know, it has been a struggle of late, just getting referrals, filling vacancies, and, you know, the network has been really supportive in advocating for us to get more resources so that we can better, you know, work with you. So as Laura said at the outset, you know, this is all designed really to make sure that you all understand how the CAP system works, how we're trying to move forward to help you request referrals. And, you know, again, this is going to be a process, right? And we'll talk a little bit more at the end about, you know, how we're setting up here to assist. But, you know, just ask for your patience as we roll this out over in the coming weeks. Okay. So, so thank you. So we'll get started, right? Lost the presentation.
So just put the presentation back up and I'll begin. Here we go. Ah, great. All right. And so there we go.
Okay. All right. So, you know, as we said at the beginning, this is really intended to address some of the frequently asked questions that we hear about the CAP system and just make sure that all of you and your staff understand what the system does and what it doesn't do. And, you know, and we can talk a little bit about, you know, the direction we're moving forward on many of these things. There's a lot of very detailed programming that's involved here. So we are looking always to enhance the system and improve its functionality. And, you know, that's sort of an ongoing discussion here and will be ongoing with providers as well. So here's our agenda. And Craig will kick us off here.
Okay, next slide. Great. So roles of HRA offices. So you know, so I'm the Assistant Deputy Commissioner under Customized Assistant Services at HRA. So I'm in a different department than OSAS. And so what CAS does is CAS provides direct and contracted clinically oriented services, as well as expertise in the areas of medical, mental health, substance use, and rehabilitation to HRA's other program components. Within CAS, the coordinated entry and PACT units, which you're probably familiar with, you utilize the coordinated assessment and placement system to determine eligibility for supportive housing. So that's the supportive housing application, which, everyone does a survey first, then submits the application. And we do verify placement data for reporting on the New York 3 and the New York City 1515 initiatives. And I'll hand off to Jennifer for her description.
So the Office of Supportive and Affordable Housing and Services, OSAS, I am the Deputy Commissioner for this office, and we manage the referral process for many of the different supportive housing programs, but we also have contracts. Many of you have contracts with us through the SRO support subsidy, but we also have other contracts, seniors and master leasing. And this is sort of our portfolio of permanent housing programs. Many of you know us best, I think, as a placement entity. So we use the CUCS system to make electronic referrals to your programs. We look at, the requirements of the program, and we match that with the client eligibility that's determined through the 2010E process. And then we work with our DHS and community partners, as well as with you all as housing service providers, to facilitate that process. As we mentioned at the beginning, other placement entities include HASA, ACS, and DOHMH.
Okay, and so I'll review, this is my opportunity to highlight the accomplishments of our efforts to meet the objectives of coordinated entry, which is a requirement and mandated by our HUD funding for New York City. And so you'll see that there are check marks here. These are accomplishments, but they're also an ongoing process. I'd like to kind of, put that out there. But we have accomplished a centralized assessment of housing options for clients. This is our coordinated assessment survey, which is in the CAP system. And what that does is it gives, potentially eligible results. There's a short questionnaire, takes about 30 minutes, and there are potentially eligible results for supportive housing and other rental assistance programs in the coordinated assessment survey. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback on the utility of that for our users and providers using that coordinated assessment survey. We also have the SVA, which is a system of identifying vulnerable clients. SVA stands for Standardized Vulnerability Assessment. And this is recorded when a household is approved for supportive housing. And so everyone knows that, prior to the SVA, there was a lot of work on developing this. It was very community-driven process. Prior to that, it really was just targeting, based on eligibility. But now we have the ability to identify further vulnerabilities for clients and categorize them. And I'm going to be speaking a little bit more on this later in the presentation. We also have enhanced quality assurance for the DHS HRA supportive housing contracts. So there is a new function in the CAP system to monitor the status of units under those contracts. We have greater real-time visibility for interagency coordination. And we have established accurate building and unit level data for about 30,000 New York City supportive housing units. And I have to admit, this is a fluid process. We're continuing to kind of verify what are the contracts, but I think it's safe to say we have never had a better inventory of units and contract information in any system. And this is memorialized now in the CAP system for your agency, which really helps when you have a lot of staff turnover and there may be questions about like what contracts are with what unit and that kind of thing. So this is a really great advancement. Yeah, so next slide.
So before we jump in on the FAQs, just want to frame this with the themes that we're going to be covering. So we're going to be looking at the impact of the SVA on referral and placement priority, connecting clients awaiting placement, which is the list that's in caps of clients with approved applications to vacant units, reportable provider referral outcomes. So we have some reports that are going to be generated towards the end of this year, and communicating with our office, with OSAS, on scheduling interviews and receiving referrals.
Great. And Jennifer and I are going to be tag teaming on some of these FAQs. And so I'm taking question number 1 and she'll be taking question number 2 on this slide. So the first question, is the SBA a score or numbered ranking? Well, it's not. It is SBA groups applicants into high, medium, and low categories. So it's a categorical system. It's not like rating clients on a scale of like 1 to 20 or something like that. It actually rates them in terms of like their vulnerability based on high utilization of Medicaid and high system utilization. And based on that, data that we collect in the supportive housing application, the client, when approved for supportive housing, will get an SBA of high, medium, or low. And so just wanted to reemphasize, individuals do not get a numeric score or rank on a list. Okay.
So given that, how does the SBA affect when a client will be referred? So our office makes the referrals for the most part. And we prioritize clients with high vulnerability for housing opportunities. That's what HUD wants us to do, and that's what we do. However, it is not the only factor that we use, right? As we talked about before, many programs have other rental subsidy requirements, right? Have special populations in the contracts. So we have to weigh all of those things too. And SBA is not always the number one factor that we can use, depending on the pool of clients that we have. There are hundreds of similarly situated clients for each vacant unit, but that, as we sort of look at the other requirements, eligibility, rental assistance, et cetera, that number can go down significantly. So we always prioritize SBA where we can, but it's not always the overlying or I can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but you guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's not the only criteria, right?
I would just note, Jennifer, that HUD, and this is how we work, referral and placement. We know, I want to note for everyone, eligibility supersedes prioritization. So we're always checking eligibility first to make sure that it's meeting the contractual obligations of your units, so that we're making good referrals, making good, matches, for the clients to the unit. And then after the eligibility is established, then we can look at prioritization in terms of like, putting, giving some kind of preference to higher vulnerable clients, right? Okay.
Yep, exactly.
All right. So theme number 2, connecting clients awaiting placement to vacant units. And so I'm going to be taking number 1 on this. And again, Jennifer is going to take number 2. And so how does the match function work in CAPS? So just want to say that, there is a lot of, ideas out there about how the CAPS system works. And so we wanted the opportunity to really clarify this point. There is currently a blunt match based on the client's eligibility and preferences, like borough choice. So it doesn't specifically match clients to vacant units. And as I said, the connection to the unit is really based on the client's eligibility. And, if they do select a borough preference in the client preferences, that is also part of the function of, the unit being selected for the particular client. While CAPS helps to identify these clients for the units, there will always be other factors. And this is where Jennifer comes in, because she's going to highlight all the other different factors that have to the system does so much, and then you need a person to really go through the factors that Jennifer is going to outline in order to make a good referral to your program. Okay, I'll leave it to Jennifer now.
Okay. So how do we connect eligible clients to vacant units, right? So as Craig pointed out, right, first and foremost is eligibility, right? We're not going to send an NYC 1515 client to, a unit that isn't NYC 1515, right? So we look at that. Then we'll look at vulnerability, right, as we're charged to do. We look at location, right, preference, borough, income requirements, right? If there are income requirements for the unit, that has to be taken into consideration, as well as accessibility. If the person needs an elevator building or needs an accessible unit, we have to consider that, right? Preferences, again, related to clients on unit configurations. Some are unwilling to, live in a shared environment, right? So we try to take that into consideration. I know this comes up a lot in interviews. Sometimes clients actually say that they are willing and then they're not, right? When they get to the interview or when they see the space, they're actually not, right? But for families, we need to look at household composition, right? Because there are occupancy requirements that are established by HPD for many of these units. So, for like a 2-bedroom unit, it needs to be a household of 3 to 4. Some programs have age requirements, right? 55 and older, 62 and older. And then there are often subpopulations too. And we just named a couple of those there. So I think of this as a funnel, really. It starts like this, and then we sort of wean down like that to find hopefully the best matches for your units. And then, as you know, we send 3 people.
Okay,
So,
next slide.
Go ahead, Craig. Or is this me? I think this is me, right? So how many? No, wrong.
Yeah. Yes. This is you.
Okay. we tried to plan this in advance, but sometimes. So how many supportive housing eligible clients are there, right? So as of February 2022, there are 7,200 clients awaiting placement. That sounds like a lot, right? It is a lot. But, this number is a point in time, right? This is fluid. Every day, clients come on and off of the client awaiting placement list, right? Applications expire, people move. And, so that this is varying. So, our team goes in and we're working with, a fresh list in a way every day, right? We also look and also keep in mind that many clients are eligible for multiple types of housing. So you may be eligible for NYC 1515. You could also be eligible for New York 3 Pop A. And you're also eligible in many cases for housing in the community. So, some clients also have city PEPS vouchers and things like that. So they may be trying to access other types of housing. Some housing categories just have smaller portfolios of available units. So these are all sorts of things that we need to take into consideration. As you guys know, some housing opportunities are re-rental only, right? So for example, general population, the city and the state are not producing additional general population units. So the only units available for this population are re-rentals. And many of you have these units in your program. And some housing programs have very specific eligibility criteria. So just pointing that out because that may limit the pool of clients that are available depending. The more layered eligibility there is, the more difficult it typically is for my team, depending on what the criteria is to really find a match. So, so keep that in mind if you would. And then question 4, I have a vacant unit in my housing program, and how does CUCS help identify eligible clients for my unit, right? And as Craig discussed before, CUCS sorts clients based on program eligibility and preferred location for each of the vacant units that are in CUCS. And, that list that we went through, well, CUCS helps to identify the eligible clients and looks at borough preference or location preference. There's always these other factors that we went through that are, that will sort of guide the referral process.
Okay. And I think this first question on theme number 3, reportable provider referral outcomes, is my question. So when will a report be available to show outcomes for clients referred? And so if people are not really steeped in the CAPS system, Jennifer's team sends the referral packet electronically to your site, and then your intake staff review that housing packet. They schedule the interviews. There's so much work that goes into this process, right? But then in terms of the CAP system, you go into the system and give a referral outcome. So you're letting us know in the system what is the what happened in terms of, did the client accept that, like, did you offer and accept the client? Did you, those kind of interview outcomes. And we expect the first public report on interview outcomes from the CAP system to be available in the fall of 2022, which is right around the corner. So currently the steps we are taking in CAP system to build a foundation of all of available supportive housing units through New York City. And, so this is really all an effort, to document what the eligibility is, what the rental subsidies are, the service contract, and all of this can now be documented in the CAP system. Our old system, you were not able to do that. So this is part of the redesign when we launched the system in October of 2020. And so we are almost, completely there in terms of like the units that make sense to be in the CAP system. And then we're working to train all the providers to use each of these elements in CAPS, such as setting up new programs, entering all the tenant data, receiving referrals, submitting the TAD reports. This has become a more sophisticated process for housing providers, but with the additional data helps us to really focus in on those referrals that will be appropriate and get that right client to the right unit. And then we'll be confirming provider information, correctly matches the contract and regulatory agreements. This is an ongoing process. You've all probably been in touch with Robin Pagliuco or your TAD liaison to, help set up your programs in the CAP system. And I have to say, we've made a lot of progress and people have been really great with this. So I do want to give a thank you to housing providers for working with HRA around this and really trying to get the system to reflect what is the requirements of your program. And then I believe the next questions are the next question is yours, Jennifer.
Sure. So when will housing providers have to enter outcomes for all referrals in CAPS, right? So as of July 1st of 2021, you were required to enter all outcomes for all pending referrals in the system as part of your TAD process, right? Your monthly report. And through June of this year, HRA CAS, right? Craig's unit will work with the providers and contracting agencies to ensure and confirm the unit configurations and accuracy of monthly reports. So just a flag here. I know that we are still working with a manifest, right? All of you are familiar with this, the sort of itineraries, scheduling document that we use, and we're asking you to, and I think we're going to address this again later, we're asking you to put the results on that form. Please continue to do that, right? But you should also be putting the results into the CAP system. We are trying to move away from using the manifest and do this work completely in the CAP system. We're not there yet, so this is sort of a transition time, but ultimately we want to have all the results and all of the data in the CAP system. Do I have the next one as well, Craig?
Well, that's just a kind of a reiteration that there will be reports available to show interview outcomes. So in addition to the public reports, we do have a plan to have reports available showing, to housing providers as well, for them to be able to know what interview outcomes, really looking at like management tools in the system for housing providers to be able to monitor your own, like metrics on interview outcomes prior to the release of the public report. Okay, next slide.
Okay. All right.
I think the first one's for you.
I think so too. So I'm a housing provider. I think this is reiterating what I just said, right?
Yeah.
I entered the interview outcomes in CAPS following the client interviews for the referrals that were sent to me. Good job, right? Do I still have to submit a manual manifest, which is basically an Excel attachment via email to the Office of Supportive and Affordable Housing? And the answer is yes for now, right? For reporting purposes, in addition to emailing the outcomes, we're asking you to enter the results in CAPS as well. And, as Craig has said, future iterations of CAPS will include the reporting of vacancies, scheduling clients, outcomes, etc., without the need for this emailed manifest exchange. We're not there yet. We're developing this phase. This is something we're actively working on because we recognize that, this is basically double work, right, for you all as well as for us. So we're moving forward on that. Am I the only person
Okay.
hearing music right
No,
now?
it's I think it's Paul Williams. If you could mute. Okay, great.
Thanks,
There
Paul.
we go. Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
All the technical challenges of the modern age, we continue to face them. And then number 2 is how do housing providers learn more or get trained on entering outcomes? And so this was a question that was I saw pop up in the chat. And so if you are not familiar with the COC CAPS webpage, please go to it. It is a wealth of resources that your staff will be able to take advantage of. There are video recordings of the survey being demoed. There are also video recordings of Robin and I going through the TAD report and showing different functionality in order for you to maintain, your tenant and unit rosters in the CAP system. So it's really a great way for you and your staff to, get up to speed, get trained, or maybe a refresher if you're a little rusty on the system. So that would be great for you to go to that website, and it's maintained with current information as well. And then it says, when will scheduling feature be available in CAPS? And like we are doing with the, as Jennifer mentioned, with the manifest and our efforts there, this is also something that we are actively working on. And it's not going to be an easy task, I will admit. It is going to be something that we are going to need housing provider input on, and also referring agency input on, in order for us to really build in the system something that works for everyone. And that's what our goal is on that. So we are actively discussing it, and we need to gather what is called in the development, field, business requirements in order that we can accomplish that goal. All right, and then.
Okay. I think
All
these
right.
2 are mine, right?
Yeah.
So, I have heard a fair amount of discussion just about, folks using the CAP system, entering vacancies and not, and then I think expecting that something is going to automatically happen. And that is not the case right now, right? The current iteration of CAPS doesn't alert us when a new vacancy has been entered at the unit level.
Mhm.
So this will not automatically prompt referrals at this stage, right? This is why we rolled out this new form today, right? So that we make sure that we are receiving your requests, that we are aware that there are vacancies for the units that we're to fill, right? That we're the placement entity for, either through our vacancy monitoring unit or through this referral request a referral form. So we are launching that. It is already live in CUCS as we speak right now, that you can access it. And, and we'll talk a little bit more, I think, at the end, just on expectations and timing and things of that nature. But just wanted to flag that because I do think that there has been some misunderstanding around, what the CAP system is doing at this point. Obviously, we're always working to sort of streamline this, make it easier, and, and make it more seamless for you all to identify and flag for us when you need a referral sent to you, right? So similarly, right, I indicated that a client moved out in my last TAD. Why haven't I received any referrals? Again, entering a move out or entering a vacancy doesn't prompt placement entities, and not just OSAS, right? Whether it's OMH, HASA, ACS, et cetera, to automatically make a referral. We still need like proactive outreach from you all. So again, we're going to just keep driving this form home for OSAS. That's how we will be addressing these vacancies and folding this into our process of setting up interviews and moving this forward to hopefully decrease the number of vacancies you have. So Tricia showed you all the form, right? And you will see this is what it looks like in CAPS, right? This is a screenshot in the announcement section. You can, I believe, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, click on that link, right? And the form will pop up and then you just email it, you fill it out in PDF. And I would ask that, please fill it out in the PDF form. Please don't handwrite things in and stuff like that. We want to just make sure. And then, anything you have a question on, you can send the question, if you'd like, I'm not sure, is this OMH? It's okay. We will be working with you to sort of redirect this stuff if it comes to us erroneously, right? And, and I think we'll all learn and get better at this as time goes on, right? As I said, the flags here are not all referrals come through our office, right? So that's why the form is developed in a way that will hopefully guide you appropriately. No harm, no foul if it comes to us, right? We will work with you to make sure that it gets to the appropriate agency. That's why the flags are there, right? And then, service contract and rent subsidy information must match what's in CAPS before we'll move forward. So, we will be checking that, right? You'll put the unit number on, you'll identify what the requirements are. I mean, part of our role and part of our job here is to make sure that we are in sync on that and that, everything is copacetic before we move forward, right? So,
And I would only add one more thing, Jennifer, is that if there is some kind of discrepancy between the CAP system and what you know to be, the contract information or anything that's in the CAP system, please reach out to your CAPS TAD liaison so that they can help you to either correct it. That way we can have an alignment there. Yeah, so it's really great to make sure that because everything will be in CAPS eventually. And so, this form is a great next step for housing providers to proactively request referrals on re-rentals. Okay.
Thank you for reiterating that, Craig, because we have a whole separate process for lease ups for new buildings. I think everybody's pretty well familiar with that. And, basically it starts with your contract agency and, and then it gets funneled to us. And then we have a kickoff meeting and, just start setting up the interviews from there. So, any questions on that? I would say start with your contract agency for everybody, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, so thanks again to everyone. And I guess we'll hand it back to Rebecca and maybe we could highlight some questions. So we look to be doing pretty good on time here. So this is great.
Hey, thank you so much, Craig and Jennifer. Really helpful, thorough presentation. I am going to ask all of the panelists to now turn on your camera so that we can see you all. And we can begin kind of going through some of the Q&A and highlighting important questions. Just for folks who are following along, we have representatives from HRA, from HASA, OMH, CUCS, and OASAS. as well as ACS, if I didn't say that. So folks can come on camera and we can start diving into some questions. So the first question, most popular question, is will the slides be shared? And the answer is yes, we will share the slides with everyone. We are recording the webinar, and I believe it will be posted on the network website with all the rest of our virtual network shops. And we will, of course, do a follow-up email and send links to the materials as well. So that was our number one question. Now, I wanted to ask, just to really clarify, two different questions came up. If you have a HASA contract or if you have a DHS, HRA, SRO contract, and you already work with a vacancy control specialist, do you need to use the request a referral form that Trisha went over?
You do not. You do not. You can use it if you want to share with your vacancy control specialist, but no, you do not. We have all that unit information, and we can work with you as we have been in getting the interviews set up.
Okay, thank you. Tommy, is there anything that you want to add about working with their HASA process?
No, not really. They can continue to do what they've been doing, and of course, contact myself at Alizair and Kina.
Okay, great. Just staying on HASA for a moment, we did have a question about whether HASA, which currently uses HASA Web, is going to be integrated into CUCS.
I can say a little bit vaguely, but I'll kick it over to Craig if he has more information. I think we're constantly looking to do it in a way that is as seamless and integrated, and of course helpful for the client as well as the providers as possible. So I think that it's an ongoing discussion, but there are no concrete plans in the immediate future to do that.
Yeah, I would echo that from the CAP side as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So next question I just want to highlight is, what if a unit has multiple eligibility criteria? And I'll say that going back to the population referral re-rental form that we went over, if something has DHS SRO support services and another overlay, you go to your DHS HRA vacancy control specialist. I believe the question might also be referring to when you're filling out the request a referral form, if there's multiple eligibility criteria. So is there anything else that you wanted to say about that, Trisha?
I can answer. I think what we would say is in the additional comments section at the end, just list whatever else needs to go in there, right? So we'll already have the basic sort of eligibility criteria. The rental assistance should be flagged in there, and the accessibility requirements, right, or whether or not the unit is shared. Beyond that, if there are age requirements, specific populations, etc., that should also all be listed in the additional requirements, right? I want to flag, these are contractual requirements, so please not preferences, right? Like that's a different matter, and we want to just keep this focused on contractual requirements for the units. Okay.
Yeah, and I would just echo that, like in the form, there's like an order to the questions. So just follow the order of the questions. I think that would be very helpful to people using the form.
And I will just add as well, so if you have a DHS HRA SRO contract and you have a New York 1 or 2 unit on there, you're going to your vacancy control specialist so that they know that that is where you're going to start. They will help you with that New York 1 or 2 referral.
Thank you. The next question that we have is, if there is a client who wants to swap SRO locations, what is the process for doing that, and what documents are needed for the process?
Well, that's sometimes easier said than done, right? That really is going to be driven, I think, by you all, the housing provider, right? Because this is very much dependent. Most folks have stabilized leases, right? And very often HPD Section 8 and rental assistance contracts there. So, I mean, we certainly, you know, if we're the contract oversight agency, don't have any objection to that if it makes more sense and would support that, as I believe DOHMH and OMH would too, you know, but that's who you should be in contact with. And, you know, but then there may be this other rental assistance piece that sort of needs to be addressed. So, you know, it's not like shelter, right? We can't just transfer people. They have leases, they have rights. So, you know, we just need to be cognizant of that. I don't know if anybody else has anything you want to add about that.
This is Robin. I did just want to add, with any client transfers, your first step is to go to your contract agency. So there's a question that just popped up in the chat asking, you know, a similar question, right? So your first step is to go to your contract agency, whether that's OMH or OASAS or DHS SRO, and that's where the conversation starts. You know, 9 times out of 10, contract agencies working together are able to find a way to support the tenant wherever they need to be transferred, right? But every case is unique, every case is different, and every case will have different requirements. So that is your first stop, is your contract agency.
And I would just add for, you know, supportive housing eligibility, that oftentimes we're flagged on transfer needs and, you know, and what that means in terms of the eligibility needed for where the client needs to go. And so we're always in that mix, and, you know, everyone tries to work it out so that the client can go, you know, when the contract agency agrees that, you know, where the client is going, then we all, you know, come to that agreement on, you know, eligibility.
Okay, thank you all. Next question I want to ask here is about CAPS, the system itself. Does the system, I'm assuming it's CAPS, tell you in real time how many vacancies there are?
Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering from what perspective. So the housing providers clearly will be able to see, you know, what their vacant units are for their program. And so I think that might answer the question, but maybe if somebody has another idea of like answering it better, let me know.
Well, I think Laura did answer this question in the Q&A, and I think it's a good thing to stress, as long as the housing provider is reporting the vacancies in real time, then CAPS will show you how many vacancies there are in real time.
Oh, that would be a great opportunity for me to plug with the supportive housing providers that all the data in the CAP system, and, you know, we've all heard this, it's only as good as, you know, it's maintained. And so, you know, you don't have to wait until the end of the month in terms of the TAD monthly process in order to report a vacancy in the unit. You can do it in real time. And so if you want to record that, and then you can list, like, is the vacant unit online? Sometimes it's offline, which means that the unit is maybe under repair. Maybe, you know, there was unfortunately a client death in the apartment before. You know, there's all these different scenarios, but now you can record that in the system. And so that is real-time information that you can put into the CAP system. And I would encourage everyone to do it as soon as possible.
Okay. So since we're still using the manifest and CAPS for some of these processes, I have a question here about OSAS. Is there any encryption software or a platform available for emailing?
There is not at this point. I mean, we're not sending applications via email. That's why we're using the CAP system, right? That is, you know, that is, I guess, encrypted. I don't know, but anyway, protected, right? A confidential system. You know, we are putting client names on manifests. You know, we can work with you around that if we want to use initials or something like that. We've taken off all other identifiers, right? So there's no social security numbers or anything like that. But we are still using that as a way to schedule, right? So, you know, we're using the manifest not just to send to you to say, hey, these are the people you'll see. It's a communication tool, basically, but also we cut it up and send it over to the shelters where the clients are residing. So they're aware of the appointment as well. And we also send them reminders. So, you know, again, if there are very specific concerns about that, I feel like we can work on that offline a little bit, but we are trying to be very, very careful about not sending like protected or confidential information via email.
And I just want to say CUCS is a secure system. It's behind a firewall. It has all the protections of that. And we have privacy protections based on, based on how you're set up in our system. So it depends on your role in the CUCS system, what information you can see in terms of, and it really should only be those clients that you're working with in the system. And so we take that very seriously in terms of privacy and confidentiality in the CUCS system.
Thank you. I think I have a pretty useful question here, which is, even though we have a vacancy, the unit is not move-in ready. Does the request for referral happen once the unit is ready?
That's a really good question. I mean, typically we want the unit to be ready. You know, if it's, I think we can work with you on that, particularly if it's a DHS HRA contracted unit. I mean, we don't want to start here's the concern, right? We don't want to start interviews too early. The unit needs a lot of repair work or is sealed or something like that. And then we have a client connected to a unit that they're not going to be able to move into for a long time, or that is in such disrepair that they're going to basically reject the unit because, you know, we've all heard these stories, right? The check is in the mail, I'll fix it, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like we need to, there's a sweet spot there. You know, I understand we don't want to wait until it's 100% maybe ready, but I feel like we need to sort of be at least 80% there so that the unit's showable and that we'll be able to, you know, connect a client to without them having too much anxiety around that.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here. This might be an individual situation, but it may happen from time to time. So I'm curious if there's an answer. Our determination letter states level 2 and the application states community care. Should they match?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, Rebecca?
Yes. And this question is from Marissa Bitoni. So if you want to type a little bit more detail, Marissa, you can do that. Our determination letter states level 2 and the application states community care. Should they match?
Yeah, I'm wondering if I can really answer that question properly, but let me take a stab at it. If you apply the client and you indicate, you know, that you are recommending a community care type setting, that's not necessarily the determination you will receive, right? And so there may be, but let's also be clear that if you have questions or concerns about the determination, you can contact the reviewer and discuss your concerns. So I hope that answers the question.
And how do they contact the reviewer?
The reviewer's email and phone number is on the determination letter. So, you know, if somebody in the PACT unit, you should hear very soon from that reviewer, like, and we have a system of coverage here. So even if that reviewer is, say, out of the office for any reason or extended period of time, we have a way of covering for folks. Okay.
Okay. Okay, here's a question for CUCS for Anika. All of our units are either SRO subsidy or New York POP A or F or HRA 1515. Is there any reason that we should have our contact info listed on the CUCS vacancy list? If not, how can we get our one site currently listed there to be removed?
It's a good question. So if you have only New York 1 and 2 units that have dedicated referral streamlines that are mandatory, you do not have to list your vacancies in the CUCS vacancy update. The CUCS vacancy update is a DOHMH funded publication. So if you're ever unsure, you could reach out to your DOHMH contract specialist to see if they want you to advertise those vacancies in the publication. But if you have dedicated mandatory referral streams that you have to get your referrals to and there's no point to publishing it out to the rest of the world, then you do not have to publish your vacancies in the vacancy update. You can email me directly, or you can email us at housinginfo@cucs.org and request to be removed, and we can just remove you from the publication.
Okay, thank you. So here's a question about client documents. Following up on Michelle's question regarding client documents, the client documents section in CAPS has been an incredible resource. Thank you for that. Are there ways within CAPS to filter candidates based on which vital documents they have available?
I guess I'm just wondering, is that from the HRA side or from the housing provider side? I think the answer is no. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there is a way to do that at this point. Yeah.
No, so I'll explain how it works. Is so when you're completing the survey, the information that you enter on the client gets matched to the HRA repository, which is a database that HRA maintains, and then that function is programmed to return copies of the client's social security card, photo ID of any kind, also the any kind of income verification documents, and also like birth certificates, marriage certificates, things like that that are gonna, kind of prove identity later in the process. And the reason why, and I'm just going to make a plug here, sorry, the reason why we built that function is that we wanted the referring agencies to know right up front how prepared their client was if they didn't have the documents on them. Like if it's in the repository, then you may be able to use that. But if you have a missing document that you're going to need for placement, it's really good to know that early in the process so that you can be working with your client on obtaining those documents. And this has become a very big issue for the actually the emergency housing voucher, and doing like Section 8 applications. But we all know that like under leasing, these are the documents that you're going to need down the road.
Okay, thank you. So here's a question. I think there's a lot of awareness here with our participants and all of our panelists that we do have more vacancies than typical. And Laura really laid that out in the beginning, that's something that actively everyone here is really trying to manage. And some of the point of the new request or referral form, and a lot of that is to start cutting it down. I have a question in the chat about speaking to the shelter directly after the referral has been made. And I was curious, we can also follow up on this afterwards, but if that was something that providers would be able to do during this time of having a lot of vacancies.
Yes, you can. Typically we have always liked all communication to go through us. I think on lease ups, we still want to do that, right? Because we're really moving a lot of, information in bulk forward, with you all and exchanging information back and forth. But for re-rentals, if you would like to reach out to the shelter directly, absolutely no problem with that. I would just ask that if you've been working with a placement specialist on our team, that you just keep them in the loop. And I will make sure that my team knows that we're, allowing you to do this, right? In an effort to expedite these placements. So yes, absolutely, you can do that.
Okay.
But
thanks.
Jennifer, that wouldn't be for the DHS SRO contracted units as well, would it?
I think the answer there is yes, right? I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
if we're trying to, if we're trying to move this forward as quickly as possible, I think it's okay, right? If you're just trying to get a revised award letter or something like that, and you've reached out to our team and you feel like it would just be quicker. I think it's okay. I really do. I'm not gonna stand in the way of that to try to move this faster. If you want our assistance or if you're struggling and the shelter isn't being responsive, I mean, that's really our role and that's what we're there for too, because we know who the program directors are and things like that, and we can assist. But I mean, you may do that. And if you prefer we do it, we'll do it for you. Yeah, that's really up to the individual agencies. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's really very much appreciated. So the flexibility, we acknowledge it and really appreciate that. So somewhat connected to that, who should be the contact when a person in shelter has to begin the process again because they have been moved to a different shelter? Is there any way to give priority to someone that has been waiting a long time, 6 months plus?
I'm not sure that I understand that, but I'm going to take a shot at this one. So, I mean, I think applications we see are by the agency that originally submitted them, right? So we look at application dates when we prioritize referrals. That's something that we do take into consideration, again, with that entire list, right, that we went through earlier and the things that need to be considered. So we also, new filter, thank you to the CUCS team, right? We can now see where a person is if their shelter has changed, right? That was not always the case, but now this is something that we can see. So I know that especially in the single adult system, there's a lot of transferring of clients from shelter to shelter. We can see where the current person is residing. So if we were going to be making a referral, we would know, oh, we can't, maybe we'll let the original shelter know, but we need to be cognizant of where the client is currently, and we would need to reach out to them and make sure that they get a copy of the manifest or the interview request as well. So this is an improvement, this is an enhancement, and hopefully this, there shouldn't be an impact really from the client's perspective because they've transferred from one shelter to another.
So they
And
should.
if I might just piggyback on that, I love to plug my system. Well, not my system, the CUCS system. With the survey, when you complete the survey, I just want to remind everyone, if it's a new provider, say it's a shelter who did the application, they got an approval, right? But then the client moves to another shelter, which is another new agency. They're going to have to reconsent the client, right? And do another survey. But guess what that gets them? They will be able to see the prior supportive housing applications for the past 5 years, including the application packet, which is currently active. And so I just wanted to make that plug because I am never sure if people understand some of the intricacies of the new features. And so what that does is it gives that new shelter opportunity to have access to the application, as soon as they engage the client.
All right, thank you. This is a question, well, I think for everyone, but just also Karen at OMH and maybe for CUCS. Are there any plans to link referrals for the child and adolescent community residences to CAPS at any point? Right now, these referrals go through CSPOA.
Well, CSPOA is for children's housing placement. So that is a separate system. CSPOA is separate.
Yeah.
And there is no plan to merge the two.
Okay. Thank
The
you.
same thing with the CARES data. That's a OMH database. It's a statewide database, and providers with OMH contracts have to enter admission and discharge decisions into the CARES system within 7 days of any occurrence.
Okay, thank you. Question about how CAP system helps scattered site housing providers. Are scattered site programs in CAPS?
Yeah. As I said before, I mean, Robin can speak to this, more intimately than I can. But the scattered site programs are in CAPS, so if they're if you're looking for re-rentals around those scattered site programs, it's the same deal. Look at the CAPS, use the form to kind of guide you in terms of like the referral request process. And I think you'll be good. But I believe we have the majority of scattered site contracts in the system now. And, certainly we have all of the tracked units in terms of, when I say tracked, I mean all of the major agreements. So New York 1 and 2, New York 3, New York City 1515, and we're also getting ESHI units into the system as well. Although I don't think that there are ESHI scattered sites, so that might not be applicable. All right, I'll leave it there.
Okay. We have a few minutes left. Laura, I want to invite you to jump in if you have any questions you're tracking, just to highlight those. And we will, there are more questions than we can answer. I want to say that, but we are going to go through these questions as well. And, we may include additional answers in the follow-up as needed. But Laura, is there anything else I'm missing here?
Sure, thanks. I'm sorry because I'm trying to monitor the chat and ask questions and answer them. Did we answer the question about once the referral form was sent, that HRA would acknowledge it, that yes, we've gotten your referral form in about 24 to 48 hours. But then what's the time expectation for them getting their 3 referrals?
We did not answer that, but we will answer it now. So thank you, Laura, for highlighting that. So as Laura said, the expectation right now is, and just so everybody knows this, we currently don't have a separate unit that just sort of deals with re-rentals, right? So we are actually proactively trying to set that up right now so that we're able to respond, given, because there's 2 things really happening here, right? There's an abundance of vacancies right now due to, COVID and just sort of a whole confluence of events, right? Staffing, et cetera, that has happened. But as the number of units in New York City increases, right, a percentage turnover every year. So this number is has been increasing year to year, and it will continue to do so as the city and the state continue to add more units, which is great, right, to the supportive housing portfolio. So we see that we really need to have like sort of a dedicated team that's really just working on re-rentals very specifically, because new projects take a lot of priority. They take a lot of time, right? Because tax credit deadlines and all of that. So a lot of our resources have really been directed in that direction. And, I'm sorry to say at the expense of some of this, right? Of some of the re-rentals. So we're really trying to address that right now, right? So we're setting up a team. We're going to have, the forms are going to come in. We're going to review them. We're going to, confirm that we are in fact the appropriate placement entity, or we're going to redirect you, to the placement entity if it's not OSAS, right? And we're going to try to do that in 24 to 48 to 72 hours, a few days, right? That should be very quick. That will get back to you and let you know, like, received, and we're going to move forward. Beyond that, I mean, typically right now we're looking at about 2 weeks, right? Or 10 business days really to start setting up interviews. And I'll tell you why, right? One is we're hoping to tighten that up as we put a team together and get more people on board here, so it's not as long. But it's always going to be a period of time, right? Because we want to give your teams opportunities to review the applications in advance of the interviews, right? And we also need to give give the homeless providers and homeless clients, right, opportunity, to acknowledge and set up their schedules. Because very often what happens from our end is if we set up interviews, too soon, people don't get notified, right? The shelters are not able to outreach them in time, and or they have other appointments, in which case we need to make an adjustment to the manifest, right, to the schedule. So those are the things that we're trying to do on our end. So right now, I would say about 10 business days, right? That's what we're aiming for, but we're hoping that amount of time will decrease over time. And I just want to say too, keep in mind that, we are dealing with hundreds and hundreds of units right now, right? So we have all sorts of things in process. And, I know some of you have had vacancies for a long time, and we will try to prioritize as many of those as possible. But we are balancing a lot here, and we are working with a lot of different housing providers. So we're just sort of trying to be equitable and fair to everybody. And, and I think over time, and this isn't going to happen overnight, right? We will start decreasing the number of vacancies, right? But recognize we have sort of a backlog, and then we have, new vacancies coming up at all times. So we, putting a team, I think, just completely dedicated to this will surely help. But I just ask for your patience and collaboration as we sort of work through this together. We really want to address these issues, and but we need your help too. So.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer. And just real quickly, given the fact, and this is welcome news, that providers can now communicate with the shelter directly, who will they know how will they find out who the shelter contact is?
I think that might be, I think that might be the challenge a little bit here, right? Like, very often clients are escorted or, virtually escorted to interviews. Typically those are folks that, can assist or would be the contact people. We can share some of that information, but I don't think we're going to be doing that at large. That's why we're sort of in the middle here. But, clients have phone numbers that they're sharing, right? There's information on the application. I know providers are very resourceful. Like, many of you have shelter programs already, certainly if you're struggling and you want to reach out, you can reach out to the placement worker, but I'm not that worried about that, actually. Like, I think that that information will be either evident from the application or from the interview with the client themselves. Okay.
Okay, thanks. And last question, is it possible to end Zoom interviews? Or are you allowing both in person and Zoom at this time? I'm actually not sure.
We are not, actually. We are still doing Zoom interviews for the clinical portion of the interview. For unit viewings, we're offering an option, right? So some clients are fine to view the unit via Zoom. Others want to see it in person. Sometimes, that's in conjunction with property management. But yeah, at this point, no, we are not going to end the Zoom interviews. We have gotten good feedback from shelters on this. It is a lot, and I just want to, put this out there for shelters that are also very short of staff, that very often have to escort clients to these interviews or they won't make it. And, to be doing this all around the city, I think is very challenging for them. Now, I recognize that, the technology associated with Zoom is sometimes very challenging for them as well. But I feel like our time would be well spent, like really helping them and improving that process, so that we have better attendance at the interviews, but just also better connectivity and, I'll leave it at that.
Right. So I'm going to kick it back to Rebecca, but to close this out. But again, we've copied all the questions, so we will answer them all and also get that out to you, in a week or so. Rebecca.
Thank you. I did want to ask one more question because it's come up a number of times. How can people get a CAPS refresher? I know it's available on the website. Robin, if you could if you have a link, we can send the link out afterwards as well. But that's a common question. Anyway, I would like to close us, and I'm just very, very grateful to all of our partners here on the screen and everyone who joined in today. We know, again, this is a really high priority issue. This is about getting people experiencing homelessness into permanent housing, and that is all of our #1 goals. So just appreciate all the collaboration, and we will continue to work together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much,
everyone.
everyone.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.